What's up, everybody? Jordan Tremaine here with another book review, and today we're going to talk about one of them self-helpers, get your mind right books, something I thought that was kind of interesting, and I read off a whim based on some YouTube video that I watched, and this book is A New Way to Think by Roger Martin. Alright, so the book is A New Way to Think. I thought it was cool with the front where it's like, peel back the layers, there's something new there to check out. So, interesting metaphor and like kind of eye grabby with the way that the cover is done. But the subtext or the subtitle is Your Guide to Superior Management Effectiveness. This is a book about management. And honestly, I read this book a while ago, some other book, but it had this I guess quote in it, or this line, and it said, "Any good business practice is a good life practice," and I agree with that because I think that business is about how to work with people to create value, and life is about how to work with people to create value. So I read a lot of business books, partly because I have a job and I try to get better at my job, but also because I think that these are good insights to use not just in the business arena, but also in other aspects of life. And it's interesting to see where you can take knowledge from one school of thought or one industry or something like that and apply it to another one. So I do read these because they have some business manufacturing knowledge, because I do manufacturing stuff, but also because they offer different ways to think, or can show interesting reasons why certain methods or schools of thought can be challenging, or what challenges they have about them. And the reason I got into this book was because there was a YouTube video on the idea of strategy and how strategy and planning are different, even though that can get confusing because there's a lot of people who use terms like strategic planning, even though those are two different things. Strategy is something that's harder to do than planning, and often people plan and call it strategy in order to avoid doing strategy because planning makes you more comfortable. And that kind of way that video was playing out, explaining that, got me curious to read this book. And inside of this book, which is called A New Way to Think, I think there's like 14 common practices or methodologies or whatever about business, and each like chapter is a different one, and the author goes through and says, like, this is like the common model, the cookie cutter model that everybody uses, and then I'm going to offer you a different model. And does that for each of the 14 things. And a couple of those were about strategy, which was what I was actually interested in, but I read the whole book because it was right in front of me. So the part I thought was really interesting was about strategy. There was some stuff at the end about like market capitalization, visualization, or something like that, that honestly was like not my ball game. But I was trying to read through it, trying to understand it, and it was saying like a lot of times people make weird assumptions about their financials, and that can lead them to having bad information, and that made a lot of sense to me. But ultimately, this book is advocating that you really do some critical thinking and check on your methods. And if your methods are working out for you, dope, keep doing it, good for you. But if you're not getting the results you want, sometimes, maybe doing the same thing even harder is not the answer. Maybe doing something different is the answer. And the author argues that a lot of time in business, usually the response to bad results is, oh, I didn't apply this method right. My school of thought, there's nothing wrong with it. I just did it wrong. I executed wrong. So let me just execute better. But that can be problematic because we start butching up and getting more and more intense into things that are not helping us, and it basically turns into a sunken cost fallacy. So the author advocates for verifying that your methods are giving you the results that you want. And if they are, keep using them. But if they're not, try some new stuff. And he gives you 14 different kind of like case study example type things to be like, here's some new stuff you could try. And I was particularly interested in the stuff on strategy, so I'm about to dive in that right now. Yeah, so strategy is an interesting thing. Strategy is how you do something. And when we're juxtaposing or putting that next to the idea of planning, planning is what you're going to do. It's not how you're going to do something. And those can get kind of confusing if you're not willing to dive into what they mean and separate them. But often, making a plan is very comforting because you're going to say, this is what I'm going to do. I can control what I do. And it will give me a result that's predictable. If I do this, this will happen. If I pick up this book, the book will be in my hand. Oh, look, I planned to pick up the book, and then I put it in my hand. Plan accomplished. But was there any strategy involved in that? And in terms of invoking strategy, rather than saying, I'm going to do this to achieve this, and creating something within the realm of what's already possible and saying, like, this is what I know is possible, let me do that. Strategy is about dreaming more and saying, like, well, what do I want to happen? And you pretend like, I don't know, maybe I want to be the author of a book. I don't want to just pick up a book. I want to be an author of the book. And maybe that's not really feasible right now. But that's not important. We're strategizing. We're trying to, like, figure out what is feasible and how to do it, and then make a plan to do it after we've made the strategy. So this book dives into that kind of stuff, and it really brings out some important points and gives you some methodologies, especially working within groups who may not always agree to do new things, or that change is good, or that can get along and stuff. So it does help with the facilitating of that if you want to follow along or get some pointers on that. But the idea of separating planning from strategy, I think, is important in doing new things, and it at least is a good construct for getting your brain to kind of jump out of its comfort zone and do things that it may not want to do, because it fills you with, like, fear and anxiety and, like, oh no, what happens if I fail? So yeah, I thought what was really cool is, in terms of strategy, where you say, well, what do I want to happen? What do I dream could happen? Once you pick something like, oh, what if I wrote my own book instead of what if I just picked the book up? Then you say, okay, well, what would have to be true in order for me to be like an author? And then you just list the stuff that would have to be true. And in planning, you kind of say, this is the goal. Okay, what's true? Can I do this or can I not do this? But in strategy, according to this author, he's like, okay, you pick a goal, like a dream or whatever, and then you say, what would have to be true? And none of that stuff really has to be true, but it helps you figure out whether or not it's possible. So if I wanted to sell, 10,000 copies of a book that I wrote, then, okay, what would have to be true? Okay, I would have to write a book, it would have to get published, and then I have to sell 10,000 copies. And it's like, okay, those things would have to be true. And now I have something I can focus on and say, like, okay, these are 3 objectives. Can I do these? And okay, I can write a book, and I can make a plan for that. Because out of the strategy births, okay, I plan for writing a book. Okay, I can make a plan for publishing the book. Okay, I can make a plan for selling the book. And it may not work out, but in this way, it helps you. Here's the comfort zone where you plan and you're like, oh, okay, what can I control? What can I do? And it kind of keeps you in your comfort zone. But when you say, well, what's possible? What would have to be true in order for my dream to come true? Then it kind of says, like, oh, well, this would have to be true. And you're like, okay, well, maybe we do this. And then now we're outside of our comfort zone, we're growing, and it doesn't always work, like plans don't always work, but it helps you with growth, with critical thinking, with doing new things, and often that's what drives innovation and invention and profit, if you want to look at it from a managerial aspect. So this book has a lot more in it than I explained. I harped on the middle section, which was about strategic planning, a bunch of other sections in here. And, no book is perfect, but I thought it gave good examples. I think it does what the title says. It gives you new ways to think. It actually does more than that. It says a new way to think. It gives you 14 new ways to think. So, badow, how you like me now? But the author is Roger Martin. I think he shared some interesting thoughts, and it's worth a read. Even if you're not like into manufacturing and stuff like that, I think it's decent because it kind of gets you into this mindset of looking at what you're doing, looking at how you're doing something, being critical and saying, is this working for me? And some techniques to kind of like break yourself out of the out of the shell or get yourself out of the rut, because sometimes you get stuck in a way of doing something and you don't even realize you could be doing something different. And reading about new ideas and different ideas can sometimes really help you with being more creative or being outside of the box. So I appreciate that. So the book is A New Way to Think by Roger Martin. Decent book to read. And yeah, this has been Jordan Tremaine with another book review. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.